Everyone, Peter Collins with the Lake Show. It's a beautiful October afternoon, a little chilly, but today we're going to go out weed hunting. The lake has many things inside of it. It's a living, breathing body of water, nature, but there's a lot of stuff in there that, well, not so good for the lake. And we're going to go out and find some of the weeds and some of the other things that aren't natural to the lake and that we need to manage. So enjoy the ride. It's late October and it's cold outside, but we're going on a little weed tour. We're going to go and find the different, we'll say, growths of invasive weeds on Lake Quinsigamond. It's become more and more of a problem every year. And we know, of course, we treat some of it. We do a drawdown, we have a chemical treatment, but now we're in the midst of changing our permits around. And these nice folks, Carl and Mike from ESS, are going to help us kind of survey the lake and find out where the weed beds are, what we have for different species, and help us develop the 5-year plan. Also, we're going to be looking at flow issues where the lake gets kind of really low in some points and the flow is not as appropriate as it should be to kind of keep the lake healthy. So here we go.
All right, let's see what we got here. So this is just a throw rake. And we use this to do our surveys a lot of times to save time, keep us off so we don't have to do diving. Oh, there you go. That's what's on the bottom here in 16 feet of water. Late in the season. This is all Eurasian Milfoil. Want a sample?
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is good, healthy, invasive species. We want to try to manage that as part of the 5-year management plan. And as you can see, that plant is doing quite well, and it's the only plant in sight in this area. So if I were to throw that rake out any direction, it's going to come up with pretty much the same plant.
And the water here is about 16 feet deep.
Yep.
And I'm going to say that plant...
So that's
about 5 feet of water now? Yeah. Okay, so we're about 5 feet of water right now. So these plants are pretty big. And there's a whole crop of them here. I don't know if you can see, like, down into the water, if that'll come out. But you can see it from the surface.
And what's bad about this weed is two things. One,
what's this one right here?
That's Eurasian Milfoil as well.
That's it too?
Yep.
Oh, I see. When you pick it up, it just kind of...
This plant grows to the exclusion of other plants, so it covers and canopies the bottom so that native plants that you'd want that provide good fish habitat, don't get in the way of the boats, really don't do well, so it outcompetes the native plants.
So if you have a native plant, I mean, they talk about, we have a thing called Vasii in here, correct?
Yes.
And, which is an endangered species. So the Vasii, we're standing around and walking around in a rowboat, which is pretty funny. But the Vasii is an endangered species, yep. So the folks like Natural Heritage that monitor and protect endangered species get concerned whenever you try to treat something with chemicals. But I guess the challenge is, or the question is, if you don't treat the invasive plants, are they in fact going to end up killing the native plants?
Eventually they will.
This will basically grow and take over everything around it. So it'll kill everything around it in the native side. So it's an important thing to monitor. And we have our existing permit has the chemical in it called diquat that we use to treat this stuff, but that's it.
That's it.
That's the only chemical we have.
And that's a spot treatment, so it only affects the weeds where it's applied.
Right. And that doesn't eradicate the weeds, it just kills it that season.
Just burns off the surface, doesn't kill the roots.
Okay.
So the roots are there to fuel the next year's growth. So that diquat herbicide, although it makes a good summer of boating, it doesn't really solve the problem long term.
Okay. Is there a solution to the problem long term?
Yeah, there are herbicides that can be used. That trade name is Sonar, and that herbicide can be used to kill the plant and the roots beneath it. So it essentially kills the chloroplasts in the plant, the green pigment, and it starves the plant. So the roots die, everything dies, and that allows native plants to come back into that area and recolonize that area.
Does it affect the native plants though when you're treating it? Does it?
At the doses they use a very low dose, and milfoil in particular is susceptible at low doses to that herbicide. So if you treat it at a low dose, the native plants around that patch really aren't affected, and it allows some regrowth to occur pretty quickly.
The other interesting thing about the plants here too is that, you know, we picked the plant up out of the water. You know, we had it in the air, but these plants are spread by fragments. So if you have any part of that plant,
such as the ones we
pulled up, we just took out, and then you have it on your prop, you have it on the bottom of your boat, and you take that boat and you go to another location, another body of water, you'll take that plant with you, and that plant will in fact get into the other lake and start a whole new colony of plants. That's probably how we got it in Lake Quinsigamon.
Yep.
And now today it's here, so it's kind of like when you have a cold. You know, your second grader brings the cold into the house, and then it spreads around your house, and that's basically what we're doing now, because people are taking our boats and we're going in the south side of the lake where there's a bunch of invasives over there, and we're spreading it around ourselves now. So it's in-house, and now we're kind of spreading it around. Plus, with the flow issues, we actually have negative flow, where some of the stuff is coming out from the other parts of the lake, because the water actually flows south and it flows north in some parts of the lake. So it's a problem. So it'd be better if we could eradicate it. I know that when you treat it on the south side, because it's in front of my house, that basically for a couple of days the lake looks like kale soup, because all the stuff's floating around in it, and then it goes away and there's no more weeds for the summer. So it's kind of nice after that. But
well, let's take a look at some of the shallower areas and see if we can find other species of plants.
More fun stuff.
Let me see if I can get something.
Looks like the bottom of the lake actually follows the contour of the bank, and so if you look at how steep the banking is, that's basically what we're doing here, because it's 20 feet of water right here, and we're probably 20 feet or 25 feet from the shore.
Yep.
So it definitely goes down, and when we were out there, which were probably like 100 feet from shore, it was only 5 feet deep. So
no weeds, no milfoil
here. Sort of a weeds here, and what are these over here, Carl?
These are whitewater lilies. They're a good plant to have at densities like this, because they aren't really obstructing any boating, because they grow near the shore and they don't grow in deep water. And then they also provide good cover for fish. So the fish would hide under those, and you just cast out and you can catch a fish that's using those as cover. So
all right.
We encourage those. We want those weeds to be present. If they get too dense, they can be a problem as well for boaters. So
is that a native plant too?
That's native. They form a nice white flower on the surface.
Okay.
In the spring.
Good plant.
Good plant. We're not against all plants. We're against the invasive ones and the ones that get excessively dense. So
that's a good plant. And the milfoil could actually take, because they look pretty robust. The milfoil, and I've seen those.
No, the milfoil, if it were to grow here, would grow in and under and around that plant.
So it wouldn't affect that, because you take those roots out, they're like...
They get as big as your arm or bigger.
They're big roots. They look like a big snake.
Yep.
And they're smelly.
Well, that too.
Yeah, they're smelly if you leave them on the shore. You get bugs in them. But they're good plants.
So let's go see if we can find another spot, maybe perhaps on that end of that cove.
All right. So, yeah, we found some more milfoil right here. This is about, say, 9-10 feet of water right here, or so. So it's about 8 feet of water. 8 feet of water, so it's fairly deep. It's growing. And this plant is almost to the surface, so these things are 8 feet tall.
All right, I'm going to toss it out on the camera side here.
Cool.
Don't get caught in the leg.
Oop.
I
Very dangerous
stepped
here.
on the rope. Might have to do another throw.
Mark, can you actually see with the camera? Can you see the weeds under the water?
So what we got here, this is a native plant called Alodia canadensis, or waterweed. It's not a very good common name, so that's why we use the scientific name.
Waterweed.
And that's a low-growing bottom plant. And this one is called tape grass.
Yep.
Or Vallisneria. And you can see why they call it tape grass.
Yeah.
But that's the root system right there that we just pulled up. And this can be a problem for recreation in that it sends up runners to the surface that people kind of...
This?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it freaks people out when they...
Freaks people
out.
out.
When they're swimming and stuff. And
so
if you ever get caught in this, my lifeguard training will tell you just to relax and go through it, but don't...
So what you see is some good native plants here.
Tape grass is native, right?
Tape grass is native,
grass is good.
It's native. It doesn't mean you want it in high density stuff.
Doesn't mean you want it in front of your house. But it's not unhealthy for the lake.
And that's more of it. Let me see if I can get the no, we got some milfoil on there too. So that's a chunk of milfoil, and it's good, healthy milfoil, and you can see the runners on that.
Yep.
So that was rooted.
Oh, okay. So this is oh yeah. This was a little piece on the bottom.
And this should get plenty more milfoil. Well, we got a little of everything.
It's a salad.
It's like a salad,
Lake Michigan salad over here. It's very nice. Get some Lake Michigan tomatoes and
no milfoil.
get the water chestnut on the other side. We'll be fine.
So tape grass and waterweed.
All right. So the good news is, you know, even with the invasives, that we, you know, Lake Michigan's growing plants, and it's healthy enough that things will grow in it, and
right.
You know,
we want
the good stuff, not the bad stuff.
The good stuff. The other thing about native plants is when they grow on the bottom, they actually cover the bottom and keep the sediments in place. So on windy days or when you have a lot of boat traffic stirring up the water,
right,
you get less sediment in the water, which keeps the water clearer. If you were to eradicate all the weeds, you'd have water quality issues and algae blooms a lot more frequently. So we encourage low-growing native bottom species.
And it keeps the old cars from popping to the surface. So that's always a good thing.
Absolutely. So what you have here is a cove with the same plant we saw on the other side, but at a much greater density. This is the white water lily. Now obviously if you lived along this shore, it's not ideal. You can see they've created a boating channel to get in and out, and they've kind of used that channel, but this is sort of an excessive amount of weeds. And in with this, there are a lot of other plants that are growing in and around the water lily. And what we have, it's starting to decay, but there's milfoil here, there's the vallisneria, and then or the waterweed, and then that's another native species of plant, also called waterweed. They love to use waterweed.
So this waterweed and my brother waterweed.
Oh, there we go. So we also have a species called water chestnut, which is an invasive species.
Okay.
And they spread by...
It's over here. Oh, that's that little flower right
Yeah,
there.
why don't you grab that, Mike? Sure. So I don't know if you can see that, but those are very rubbery, paddle-like leaves, and that's a water chestnut plant, and it doesn't have the chestnuts on it, it has the flower, but they would form a nut that's about that big, and that nut, when it breaks off, either sinks to the bottom and grows another plant, or it floats down the lake and actually forms another colony of this water chestnut elsewhere in the lake or even further downstream of the lake. We do a lot of work in the Hudson River and Charles River, and this stuff's everywhere. And once it gets everywhere, it's very hard and expensive to manage. So if you can find it early and pick it before those nuts form, pick it, put it in your boat, compost it on the shore or well away from the shore, and that's the way they eradicate these early infestations. But once it gets more than an acre or 2 acres in size, it gets much less manageable by hand picking, obviously, because it's a lot of work.
So from a standpoint of aggressiveness, is this a more aggressive invasive than milfoil?
Well, as you can see, the way the milfoil grows is it grows up off the bottom, and the plants have to come all the way, oh, heron, come all the way to the surface.
Oh.
Whoa, ramming speed.
Sorry. Oh, it's a hole in the pontoon.
Might need to.
Sorry.
The milfoil grows up and flows across the surface of the pond, and so that forms its canopy. This comes straight up and then forms a big round canopy, essentially. Yep. So every single plant, in and of itself, can start shading out the bottom, and when you get a colony that's dense, it wipes out the bottom plants growing beneath it, and that further allows it to spread. So milfoil and they both spread differently,
yep,
but both are aggressive. This one is, I guess, a more recent invasive.
Yep.
So we really don't know how bad it'll get in New England, but if you go to the Concord River system or the Charles River system, it's everywhere.
And
so
it doesn't die because of freezing or...
No.
No, it's pretty robust in that. So it's good for New England. It's good in itself.
It'll be here next summer. And
right.
So you can see here, I could throw out the rake. This is a big dense patch of milfoil here.
Can you see that, Mark? No?
So
Mark can't see anything.
But that's okay. But there's also, here's another native species. That's pondweed, it's called.
Yep.
it's large.
Different pondweed.
Yep, different one. It's called large leaf pondweed. It's got these big, sort of curled, banana-shaped leaves. Good, healthy native plant. We like that one. We don't like the chestnut.
Okay. So, in the water chestnut, just kind of there's two kinds of ways you can basically spread if you're a plant. You can spread by fragments, which is what milfoil does. So if you get any part of that in your prop and all that, like we just explained, the water chestnut and a plant we'll see later on called sacred lotus actually spreads by seeds. So once the plant gets to its flower stage and the seeds are there, when those go into the bed, it basically, expands, and that's really difficult. Like Carl was saying, that once you get to the treatment stage or you want to eradicate it, to get the seeds out of the bed of the lake is very, very difficult. So
it takes many years of treatment
right.
to kill one population.
So it's better to get it when it's like one or two plants, like we just saw, and nip it in the bud.
Literally.
All right, we're going to try to go into the secret tunnel.
Secret?
The secret tunnel that no one knows about except it's right there.
So what you have over here is a large stand of purple loosestrife, and you can see behind it there's cattail.
Yeah.
And so the purple loosestrife is the invasive, the cattail is the native desirable species that you want to have. What the purple loosestrife does is it doesn't provide good forage for animals like ducks, but it does march its way out into the channel over time, creating runners that it sends out, creates shallower water, and then it allows it to expand its territory.
Okay.
So there's a lot of that along that shore, and on the far shore over here, you have a plant called Phragmites Australis, or Phrag, and Phrag is also called common reed as well.
Yep.
It's an invasive plant, and it also competes against the cattails and some of the native shoreline vegetation that you'd want to have. So over time, these two plants will start to ring. You can see there's more purple loosestrife over there, and it will start to take over. And all these lilies that are up here are helping this water become shallower over time. So the lilies make it shallower, which allows Phrag and purple loosestrife to expand. And over time, this will become much more of a wetland with a stream running through it where the water kind of flushes out the sediment and keeps a channel. But this will no longer be a pond. It'll be a wetland because of these invasives that accelerate the movement from pond to wetland over time. So
these invasives, how do they
get here?
Yeah.
Well, purple loosestrife has seeds, and as you can see on the Phragmites, they have a tuft of seeds, and the seeds blow in the wind. And so if you go along the Mass Pike, for instance, you'll see Phragmites or that common reed all along the wet margins on the sides of the road. So it's everywhere in the state. It's not, unique to this pond. And it's something that every pond is battling. So if you see those plants growing along your shoreline, although this purple loosestrife makes a beautiful purple flower, you really need to rip it out and rip it out by the roots early, and then ideally compost it so that the seeds die in a hot compost, or haul it off to the dump. So there's, what you don't want to do is just dump it on the shoreline near your neighbor's yard, because that'll just move the problem down shore.
All right, they're just kicking the can down the road. And the lilies here, I notice there's boats over there and stuff, and there's channels. You can see where the boats go, which, and I mean, does it make any sense to treat the lilies to kind of keep them at bay so that things don't get shallower and make a better environment for these things? Or would that be part of the management plan if you did? If you want to get rid of this stuff?
It depends on how much money you have. I mean, you got to prioritize, and the priority would
money's no object.
If money is no object, yes, treat. If money is an object, or you have to prioritize your money, treating your invasive species, the non-native species like milfoil and water chestnut and fanwort, you want to get those first.
Yep.
And then working towards further improvement after you get those under control by managing these would be the next goal.
Wow,
there's a lot to do, and it's really deferred maintenance. If you let things go over time, people don't realize it until it becomes a little too late, and then at that point it costs more money to get it under control than if you had just plugged along all along little by little and spent a good amount of money each year to keep after it.
Right.
It's kind of like I guess painting your house, you know, you can keep up after it or wait until it gets really bad and spend a lot of money to scrape it all down and start over.
And I don't know if you had heard us when we were driving in here, Carl was talking about, you know, there's water chestnut right here. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there
Yep.
it is.
So, so it is over here.
We got some water chestnut right here. And Mike, you should pick that so that it's not here.
So we're going to take that out here. We're going to do some weed management
right now.
Some live weed management right here in front of us.
See that weed right there? That's water chestnut. That's a full plant.
We're taking it as a sample.
And you can show the camera, Mike. That's what it looks like. If you see that in front of your house, pull it out and compost it. And call, you know, ideally, let Peter know that you found it in that area so that we have it on record.
And we were talking on the way over, and this particular part of the watershed is north of Lake Quinsigamond proper. So
The seeds.
It's really important that we you know, put some attention to this, because whatever we do down there, we can eradicate every weed that we have on that side of the road, but it's still over here. So which means, you know, stuff flows south, that we're still going to keep getting it. So it's important that we also try to get as close to the source as we can, so we don't have problems down the road.
That's a chestnut.
That's a chestnut.
So that's the actual seed. If you pull this off of the bottom, you can see what the seed looks like, and it's got 3 very sharp spikes.
Oh yeah.
That stick out.
Ooh, so sharp.
And if you cut that open, it's white flesh inside, just like you'd think of a water chestnut to taste, but it's not the same. And I wouldn't advise biting it with the sharp spines.
No.
So these seeds, if we had left them, would have moved downstream into the lake proper.
We're already saving the lake.
We're saving the lake today.
Okay, so we're over here in Half Moon Bay, or Half Moon Cove, depending on when you were born, I guess. And I'm going to say probably less than a decade ago, there wasn't a whole bunch of milfoil or any other really invasive over here, and it was a clear spot to swim. And over the last few years especially, we've been getting a lot of more input from the neighbors that, you know, the weeds are really starting to take over here. It's an interesting thing, and, you know, again, back to the time we're spreading this stuff around ourselves now, because we're picking it up in different parts of the lake and bringing it over on our own boats. But also, this is where, we're going to go around the corner in a second, but this is where we're actually getting a flow, that the lake is actually flows north, coming out of the culvert on the other side of it. This over here is Edgemere, and basically Edgemere is an island. So on the other side of the island is Flint Pond and Flag Pond, where the invasives are really populated the lake over there. So that's probably our worst, our most dense population of the invasive weeds. So what are
we just drifted about,
yeah, we just drifted out a little
30, 40 feet. Very windy today. We'll do a quick sample over here near the lilies.
We actually have a yellow lily over here, which is different than the lilies we saw before, which were white lilies. And unfortunately, we don't have, they're beautiful flowers, actually. And they're not budded, you know, they're not budding right now, but.
That's good.
So see what kind of treasure we have coming up off the bottom.
So we've got some familiar players and a new player. This actually is Coon Tail. So although you may not see it from that far away, it looks a lot like milfoil. It's actually another problem plant. It's not necessarily it's invasive, but not exotic, which means it can be a problem to swimmers. So Coon Tail.
Is Coon Tail a native plant?
It's native, or more recently, you know, long ago it was an invasive. So that's...
Long ago it wasn't invasive.
It's still invasive. Invasive versus exotic. Invasive means it can grow to excessive levels.
Yeah.
Exotic means it's not from this area.
Okay.
So we have tape grass, which we had before.
Yep.
So that's good. Throw this in here and see what we get in some of the more shallow waters. And we have a lot of filamentous algae. This is another pondweed. That's a native pondweed called Robinson's pondweed. It looks kind of decaying right now, so it's not as nice as it looks in the summer. And we've got filamentous green algae. And we got some milfoil. Let's see if I can
Eurasian milfoil.
Eurasian milfoil, yep. And I'm having a hard time pulling it up because the milfoil, when I try to pull it up, breaks apart, but that's some Eurasian milfoil. So it's starting to decay over here because it's so late in the year. There's another piece of it. So you definitely have invasive weeds here in this bay, and as Peter had mentioned, it's growing to a level that, you know, 5 years ago was not maybe a problem, but because it hasn't really been aggressively managed over time, it just will take over, and these native plants that you see will start to disappear, and you'll end up with more and more milfoil over time.
Right. So this is the eastern side of Edgemere Island, the Stratton Island as it was known in the old days. And basically from here, and I'm looking south right now, but the water's actually flowing north. It's flowing from the south side of the pond right there into Half Moon Bay here. That's maybe one of the causes of weeds. It may not be, because again, we're spreading it around ourselves just with the boats. But it's an interesting phenomenon, and we can't really see it that well over here. But if you were on the other side of this bridge, it's actually very, very shallow. And the lake's up a little bit because we've had a lot of rain in the last few days. But normally, it's a very shallow thing, and you can't get a boat through. In the old days, I say the old days, I'm talking probably 20 years ago, you could actually, you know, a boat like this could easily go through there and not hit anything. And today, you really can't do it. In the summertime, when the lake's a little bit lower, you literally could not even take this boat, even without a motor, through. You'd have to get out and basically yank it through over the sand and the silt. And there's some pipes coming down off the side, and of course there's a commercial building on the other side too that contribute to all that. But that's one of the things we want to address in the 5-year plan is to open up that flow to help make the lake a little bit healthier and get the flow moving south, because everything goes south and around the island and then through the Irish Dam and down onto the Quinsigamon River. So that's a choke point, if you will, for the lake as far as the flow goes. So we first noticed this in the 2015 season, and actually the lotus was right around this dock over here and right to the point, and that was it. And this plant, it's very aggressive, as you can tell. It's expanded down here, and where you're sitting right now is basically a channel, and people come in and out here. It's like a road in Lake Quinsigamon, we'll say, in the water. So we think that that's probably why it hasn't expanded out into that part of the channel yet, because it's too active. But you can see here, it's not only is it coming down this way, it's actually going around the corner. So if we don't do something aggressive as soon as possible with this thing, it's really going to take off and possibly take over. This has the potential, literally, to take over this whole area of water. So you don't want that. It's a beautiful looking plant. There's no flower on it right now, but when those flowers, when those buds are out, it's a beautiful pink flower, and you've seen them a lot because a lot of Asian restaurants use it as a garnish on plates, and there are pictures of it on menus and whatnot. That's the sacred lotus that we're talking about. You can actually eat it.
There's the seed head right there.
As gross as it is. There's the seed head right here, yep. So basically it's the seed spread plant. We're not sure how it got here. A lot of people use it to put in their koi ponds. Someone may have taken it out and dumped it out with their fish or something, I don't know. A bird could have taken it over here, I guess, because they could have eaten a seed out of a koi pond and come over here and dropped it. We don't exactly know how it is. I can assure you that none of the neighbors put it here because they're not really happy that it's here right now. And you can see what it does. It's devastating to the waterfront and their docks and getting their boats in and out and whatnot. So it's not a naturally occurring plant in Lake Quinsigamon, and we really need to get at it right now. But you can see the big elephant ear leaf on it.
Big leaf. This is 4 times bigger than what you'd get on any typical lily. The seed heads here. With this, the way you would treat this is you'd come in and use an herbicide called glyphosate, basically apply it to the leaves and the foliage, and it would die back, and the glyphosate actually gets taken into the plant and kills the root system as well. But because of the seeds, and the seeds being dropped every year, you'd have to come back and treat multiple years for whatever regrowth occurred. So you're probably looking at 2 to 3 or maybe even 4 years of treatment before this patch gets controlled. But within the first year, you'd stop it from spreading, which is the goal for the year 1 of the management plan. Year 2 and 3 would be to keep coming back and shrink the population down until it's no longer here.